Alrighty, I think we are good to go. Welcome everybody. We're back for another live project feedback session. We have 11 companies today that have either been or are in the top 50 on the Pioneer leaderboard, and they've sent us questions about the companies that they're building. We have a bunch of folks from the team, myself, Andrew, Sri, Daniel, who are going to try our best to answer these questions, give the company some feedback, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Andrew, you want to take it away?
Let's go ahead and get started. Let me go and share my screen. Start with this one. So can everybody see my screen? Testing. Visible. I think we are. All right. So for the first company, we have Preppally and Preppally. That sounds a little bit better. And what they do is they help you land your dream job at tech companies in 6 months. And their question was, how do you bootstrap a marketplace? So let me quickly scroll through and get a better idea of what you're trying to do here. Okay, so you have a bunch of content that people can watch to practice their interviews. Looks like mainly interview prep, so resume, job interview, that kind of thing. And I'm guessing you're a marketplace because you have instructors that work at these target companies and you have these job seekers that are looking to join one of these companies. So I would say for something like this, if you're looking to bootstrap a marketplace, it sounds like you have existing content already. So I imagine there are people out there on places like Udemy or these like other e-learning websites that where you can kind of source demand from of people that are looking to find jobs. And I think, yeah, the tricky thing about marketplaces is you kind of need demand on both sides, right? I think the nice thing about this one is that the instructors on the supply side don't necessarily need to have like a lot of customers, or in this case, a lot of job seekers, because they already have full-time jobs. They're doing this thing on the side. So it's not like a situation like Uber or, Uber Eats or DoorDash, where presumably they're doing like the full time. So I think it's less difficult to bootstrap on the supply side. So given that you probably have a fair amount of like, you probably only need a few instructors to do this. Most of it is going to be coming from how do you find people that are looking to improve their resumes or improve their job prospects, that kind of thing. So what I would do is really try to figure out which places you can source demand from. So I already mentioned one, like these people that are looking at these online e-learning classes. Another one would be like colleges, people that are like graduating or are looking for internships. Another one would be people that are maybe like 2 years into a job that are maybe looking to switch jobs, that kind of thing. Subreddits like CS career questions. So like there are these places or these communities online, I'm sure that you can post in or like learn more about to get these people onto your platform and onto your marketplace. That's kind of the way that I go about it. So basically I would the thought process here is supply is probably not that hard to source. You only need a few people. Demand is probably the harder thing to find because there's so many different places you can go look. But what I would do if I were you is I would go and try to mine all these different places and communities for people. So yeah, I think this is probably more of a demand problem than it is a supply one at the end of the day, especially if you already have existing content that you can give to people. So yeah, that's what I have for you on Preppally. The next one is SafeTrucks Online. And their question is, how do I improve landing page conversion? There we go. Okay, so what they do is they move freight across locations in Nigeria. And their question is, how do I improve landing page conversion? Okay, so the first thing that I would say is when I come to this landing page, I have an idea of what you do. You help people move things. You help do trucking from point A to point B. So, okay, so I'm assuming I come to your page and I'm looking to move something. Let's see what happens if I try to request a quote. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is I need to fill out a few things. I need to say I'm shipping from Lagos to, let's say, Zaria. Request a quote. Okay, and then there's a whole host of things here to fill out. So when you say landing page conversion, I'm assuming what you're asking is like, how do I when someone arrives at my on my page, how do I increase the probability that they become a customer, right? And I guess to become a customer, step one is filling out this set of quotes. Right now, I say that visually, it's a lot to take in. If I'm coming to this page, I'm probably a little intimidated of like all the things I need to click. I need to click a very long thing of things that I'm shipping, cars, I'm guessing. When you have something that's in such has like so many selections, if it's not mandatory, I would suggest doing freeform so it's less intimidating. So basically make this a text field as opposed to a dropdown. If someone can just say like a Toyota Camry 2021, as opposed to selecting like, 3 things from 3 different forms, it probably decreases the amount of time they just need to spend filling it out. It will likely increase the likelihood that they end up converting. All this sort of stuff. Okay. Looks like this isn't even the first thing I need to continue. So I would say like step 1 is probably simplifying the intake. If you want basically someone to just fill out a quote, like ask them like a set of let them know how long it's going to take, like say like, oh, this is only going to take you like less than 2 minutes, give them all the things they need to do, but try to make it not too intimidating to increase conversion. Stuff like this. This is fine. Maybe a little more pop for like how it works, maybe a little bit less text. This isn't bad, but it's a little bit hard to read. I think there's probably a better way of communicating the kind of jobs that you've done. Pretty short on, I don't know if this is real feedback here, but maybe it is. Okay, good, awesome, okay. And then another call to action I think is good. I'm not exactly sure what this means, but I'm assuming on this side you're asking if they are coming not with intention of partnering with you to help you move freight as opposed to needing to move freight. This is where they would click. Okay. Search jobs. I'm assuming this is this is where people can find jobs to do. Okay. Yeah, I would say it sounds like to me that your main thing that you want from this is someone to request a quote. And I think it will go a long way by simplifying the form intake, making it more maybe text field as opposed to drop downs and that kind of thing. And general landing page feedback, I think it's not bad. Maybe having the call to action a little bit simpler, so I don't need to click as much to get started. It's probably the right first step. All right, moving on to the next one, which is rspacebar.com. And their questions are around go-to-market. What strategies can we do to acquire more users? And are there any new verticals you think that we can explore? So let's see what they do first. So they're Spacebar. They help you find event spaces. So I'm assuming this is presumably a marketplace like Airbnb for event spaces. Okay. Then they're in Accra in Ghana. So let's see if I wanted to host like a wedding in Accra on actually I need it on, let's say, Christmas. It looks like the search function just takes us to the browse anyway. So maybe one small point there is to just get rid of that altogether so people can just browse. Featured spaces, open air lawn. Okay. So you're doing so the first question around go to market. I think the first thing that I would do is I would ask the question like, who needs event spaces? Right now it looks like your acquisition is you're like going and you're creating this like kind of Airbnb-esque experience where people come on your page and look for things. I think it might make sense to be a bit more targeted, assuming that you probably don't have a whole lot of, like, the thing with marketplaces like this is when you start off, you don't have a whole lot of supply, right? You probably don't have like hundreds of locations that will cater to all the different needs that people will have when they visit your website. What I would do is I would try to solve maybe a more specific need. Maybe you're really great at hosting weddings at these like, these nice lawns that you had in your spaces. I would just go and start looking for people that are looking to host weddings or hosting like a very specific kind of event. Like all these would look like great like wedding locations, at least these top 3. And I would just be more targeted in that regard and find people that are looking for a specific kind of events and approaching them being like, hey, can we like, do you want to host an event in the space of ours or something like that? So instead of trying to build like a marketplace for, all different kinds of events, maybe specific kinds of events. And if you specialize in that, when someone comes to your website with intent, they're already in the category of event that you're solving for with your product, as opposed to any event where presumably you're going to get a lot more bounces if someone comes to your page and they're hosting an event that might not be a good fit for the kinds of locations that you have. So step one around go-to-market is to build for a more specific use case, and maybe in this case, a specific kind of event. The second question that you had is around vertical exploration. So let's say you have like a great space, like what other verticals? Like one is just Airbnb. Like maybe you can become like an Airbnb superhost for like the different that's an interesting way of acquiring customers. Like if you find, for example, you just post all these Airbnb and you find a lot of people that are booking you have very similar use cases. Maybe a lot of them are hosting parties or bachelorette parties or something like that. That will give you an idea for what kind of customers you should be targeting. So that's both a go-to-market strategy and potential vertical to explore. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other like vertical specific things. It's hard to think of things. Like if you have like a physical space, there are so many things you can do with it. Like I've seen another vertical where like someone was putting locations up for film, like great movie shot locations. That's another idea you could possibly explore. But I don't know how many like vertical specific things that there are once you have like, a unique space, what you can do with it other than like, host an event, host like a hotel, like an Airbnb, host for film locations, that kind of thing. All right, hopefully that gives you some ideas. Let's move on to the next one, which Daniel, MindSeat wants a deck review.
Let's do it.
MindSeat in Bali, Indonesia.
Yeah, continue. You can continue going.
I feel like we've talked about variants of this idea for our own like offsites before. Having a nice setup.
Familiar. Yeah. Well, there's a bit of a typo there. Anyway, short term. I think this is probably a good idea. Remote. I know everyone thought remote was going to be the future, and now everyone thinks it's not going to be the future. And the truth is always somewhere in the middle. But I think what this deck is probably missing, to your point, Andrew, is just in a comparison to like existing competitors. I sort of highly doubt there aren't places you can go to rent office space in somewhere like Bali. And so I think it would be good to have a map of like what the competition offers pretty early on in the deck. I'd probably make that my second or third slide. And maybe it's like competitors, I don't know if they don't have good desks or monitors or keyboards and that type of thing. And maybe that's the value proposition. I sort of doubt it's first mover. I think we could pretty easily Google and find like a co-working space in Bali. So that'd be the main thing I'd fix. It's good that there's some sense of traction. Where's that, like slide 11 or something? Maybe there you go. I would not say cash flow plus. I would just say that let's see, is this real? Let's look at this for a second. Okay, so there's a couple of things I don't understand here. You invested $22,000. Is that 22,000? At least to American investors, that'll look weird because of a period. It looks like you invested $22. So I would change that. Your ROI on your first year estimate is 140%. First of all, what does it mean when you say estimate? And you're 2.5 months old. So
what does that mean, your ROI on your first year? These are the questions I'm thinking about as a potential investor reading the slide. You say you're profitable, and you maybe are. There's probably a good way to demonstrate that. Yeah, I mean, this reads a little bit weird to me. And you say scale will improve ROI significantly, 250% easy. I feel like I'm being sold when I read that, to be honest. So there's probably a way to word that just probably just have a chart here of, your revenue, and or if you don't want to do that, you just have a standard breakdown of your line items month over month. If you're 2.5 months old, maybe 3 columns of just like, how much cash in, just look at your typical lemonade stand financials and your revenue. I think that would, you're probably good at it. But otherwise, I think it's good. I think it's clearly a decent idea. People will want to travel the world and work remotely, and it's a scene. I think that scene will probably drastically decrease now that normalcy is coming back into the market. Like, I think, on the margin, more work you'll need to do more work to earn a salary in 2022 probably than 2021. That said, engineers can work remotely. So I sort of doubt that's going to go away in its entirety. Anyway, these are my edits. Looks promising.
Nice. Moving on to the next one, which is FoodUCare. And their question is, when is the perfect time to switch from page for investors and accelerators to a customer page? And I must proceed.
Yeah. You should.
How do I proceed?
I was able to see this one before.
There we go. I just got rid of HTTPS and it was fine. So sorry,
I don't think,
question.
I mean, it's a good question. I think founders have an instinctual idea that they need to first get money, so they need to pitch investors, and then with that money, they're going to get customers. And I guess that could sort of work. The easiest way to get investors, though, is to have customers. And so if you invert it, I think you tend to have to work much less hard. So I think you always start with your customer page, to be honest. Maybe there's situations where that's not true. Like if you're working on something that's, going to take 10 years to get to revenue, although I think that'd be disastrously difficult to fundraise for. Maybe you focus on that. If your investors are your customers, you might obviously have a page that focuses on your investors, like if you're a fund, and you're getting other investors. But normally your day one page should always be about your customers. Businesses or corporations ultimately, and they need to generate revenue, cash flow. And so to do that, you need to get people to part with their scarce resource, in the form of money. So you need customers really to do that. That's really what you need. Anyway, this website is a decent-ish customer sort of oriented or focused website. And it makes sense. I think this has sort of been tried many times in the past. Maybe just computer vision hasn't been good enough. I think there's some issues, obviously, that the camera photons don't contain density information. So like the camera cannot see inside the salad and see exactly what it's composed of. Now, like, obviously, if you had maybe the iPad LiDAR can see the density of food. But I think today that's sort of been the issue with these things, is like if you take a photo of a banana, that sort of works. But like if you take a photo of a sandwich, it's going to be very hard to guess the calories. So anyway, that's not what I've been asked about, but typically I guess that's sort of what people struggle with. But maybe, phones are getting LiDAR now. So maybe it's possible through infrared or some other light spectrum to capture the density. And I don't even know if density correlates to calories, because you have to know if it's protein, carbohydrate, or fat, right? Those have different caloric content per density. But anyway, if you can figure that out, I think it would be huge. Yeah.
All right. One more for you to Daniel. So this is Neiba. And their question is, should we be 100% software company like Instacart, or do we need to invest in logistics and warehouse infrastructure to build better defensibility? And then they followed that up with, what do you think will result in better long-term unit economics?
Okay, so this first figure out what this does. This is where okay, so if you're part of a community, you all go shop together. So maybe it's we moved during COVID to a suburb with 3 or 4 friends. We all live near each other and we buy groceries together, something like that. So their question was whether they need to become Instacart or have their own facilities. Was that
That's right. Basically become full stack or just be the connector on the marketplace.
I don't know. That's a good question. And those businesses are very hard in either direction. And ultimately those businesses, like a business like Instacart, really only ends up making money from ads. The actual grocery shopping business is difficult. I'd probably start with that though. I would definitely not build a warehouse. That seems really hard and low margin. So I try to build software. Ideally that, just sort of aggregated demand and maybe offer discounts from particular grocery. Maybe there's like one community you can start by targeting. Like, I don't know if there's some college town somewhere and a bunch of stores, like that's probably how I would start. And I would repeat that 10 times. You have quotes from WhatsApp, and whatnot. So maybe you could do literally that thing over WhatsApp you have quotes about people using WhatsApp to do this. So maybe you could do that. And I do think if you can aggregate a lot of demand to buy particular things, you can probably negotiate discounts. So I think the product makes sense, at the limit, like obviously Costco negotiates discounts from suppliers because it has aggregated demand. And so, so they get more effective pricing that way. And so I get where you're going with that. I'd probably start off just by trying to do that, within group chats and whatnot. And then if I had to build an app, I'd probably build something like an Instacart model. And then, later on, you can figure out if you want to have a Sam's Club, Costco model where you own the stores and you have the whole control over the supply chain, or an Instacart model where you don't. I think both can make sense. I think that's a for later question. First, you probably need like a lot of aggregated demand. Food and groceries are so low margin to begin with that meaning the reason Costco is vertically integrated was that's really the only way they could squeeze the margin is it's not enough to just call a CPG company and say I'd like it but cheaper, because they themselves don't have margin. So you really have to create Kirkland, which is a generic brand, and start buying the peanuts directly from But anyway, you don't have to think that far. You just need to aggregate a couple $1 million of demand and then go from there. So yeah, I would definitely start off in the style of Instacart if I was doing this.
Okay,
Yeah.
this next one's for Shri. Oops. And their question is around their goal is to build a B2B product, but right now they're starting with this B2C version. They're pushing to close clients on the B2B side in parallel. Is this the right approach, or should we only focus on one at a time? So the B2B versus B2C question.
Okay, awesome. So let's take a look at what we have here. Offramp. Looks like you're able to sell crypto from any wallet, get fiat back instantly in your bank account. Can we try the demo really quick, Andrew?
Sure.
And see what it looks like. Okay, awesome. So it looks like you can toss some amount of Bitcoin in or any sort of crypto. And then,
oh. 15,000, so 0.1. Let's do 0.1 to be safe.
Sure. Okay. Okay, we'll try tossing something random in here.
Or John Doe.
Okay, well, never mind. All right, well, it basically looks like it is a KYC. So it looks like a one-time KYC during onboarding for new users, lets you sell your crypto. Andrew, if we can go back to the landing page and scroll down. Wonderful. Oh, okay, here we go.
Demo will do.
Yeah, let's.
Hi, I'm Prashant. I'm here to explain how this Offramp solution works. Offramp is a simple web app where a user can go liquidate his crypto instantly and withdraw fiat into their bank account. Let's see how it works. First, user will have to select the crypto he or she wants to sell. So let's select BTC. I will liquidate 0.004 ETHs, which translates to 5.51 euro. I'll enter my email address. And we allow user to liquidate crypto into different ways. One, user can liquidate crypto into a virtual debit card, and user can withdraw the converted fiat into their bank account. Let's see how the virtual debit card works. Now I'll be asked to connect to wallet. Right now we support only MetaMask for non-virtual crypto wallet. So So I'll connect my wallet, and as you can see, the app is connected to my wallet with this address, and this is balance. I will sell 0.004 Ethos. So I'll have to confirm the transaction of transfer of 0.004 Ethos to a ATM address we generate internally for each user onboarding. I'll confirm this transaction. And right now the transaction is being confirmed in blockchain. Once we receive the Ethos, we process the payment and make sure the app is available on our available on process. The transaction is confirmed, and we are processing the payment as related. We receive the Ethos. Here's a debit card with 5.5 euros on it. Let's see how Offramp to IBAN works. Let's select Bitcoin or Lightning. I will create 0.0004 test Bitcoin, which is 8.01 euros. Here I'm entering email address because I've already performed my verification process. First time user will have to perform a simple verification process to this app. Without IBAN, I'll have to enter beneficiary bank details. IBAN. Here is our Bitcoin testnet Lightning invoice. I will use it for 2 invoice. The invoice payment is done. As soon as we receive Bitcoin, we will be initiating a wire transfer instance of transfer to your bank account. Since it's a tested app, none of the transfers are real. But you, as in your transactions, the transactions will be initiated and will receive your bank account instantly. This is a solution. I hope you like it, and please provide us feedback on info.
Okay, interesting. So it looks like a crypto off-ramping solution. And the question was, do we sell B2B or do we sell B2C? It sounds like long-term you guys want to sell a B2B product. Currently, you're selling B2C with some B2B on the side. So I think the first thing to kind of think about here is what this solution lends itself to. I know there's typically this problem with crypto off-ramping, right? Where the flow earlier used to be, you know, as a user, you have to figure out whether the exchange allows off-ramping in the crypto that you hold. You have to learn about swapping, you have to learn about bridging, you have to swap a crypto for another crypto and then bridge it across chains. You know, if the crypto you're trying to off-ramp isn't supported by the exchange, and then you have to bear the burden of gas fees. And then there's swaps and even higher fees when you're bridging assets. And the issue here is that you essentially need a lot of technical understanding, a lot of time to execute all these different transactions, and you have to be able to deal with gas and bridging fees, which is just kind of a monetary burden on the user. So it looks like what Offramp is doing on the consumer side is making this easy and making it kind of frictionless to be able to sell or off-ramp any crypto out of any wallet. I think this is generally kind of an interesting solution. I see why you want to sell this B2B. I think there's a lot of companies that do this in this space. Circle does this. I know there's one called Transact that does this. There's Crypto Payments that does this. My question regarding B2B versus B2C sales is why exactly you want to attack B2B sales with what feels like kind of a point solution, because Circle and Crypto Payments and Transact, all these are kind of full stack payment solutions for crypto on and off ramping. And it looks like Offramp, as the name suggests, is built primarily to off ramp. Something that might be interesting to consider here in terms of, you know, selling B2B versus B2C is the fact that you guys are leveraging iBanks. And something I know that's pretty interesting about iBanks is there's this kind of difference between multi-currency iBanks and then like traditional single currency iBanks. And I know multi-currency iBanks have been pretty slow to be picked up by corporate. They're generally retail as far as I know. And this is typically, I think, as far as I know, because corporate maintains like this ledger in different or multiple ledgers in different currencies in their ERP systems. So they prefer to kind of, you know, be presented with that information on a currency by currency basis. So since there's some sort of retail tailwind almost when it comes to iBanks, I would probably think about selling to users, something or consumers. Something interesting I think about Offramp that Circle doesn't typically do, or Crypto Payments doesn't typically do, or Transact doesn't typically do, is you generate these Visa cards that basically let you immediately use the crypto that you've off-ramped into fiat. So I would probably think about it in that sense. Put succinctly, it's, you know, where are you making the biggest marginal difference? I think, in my opinion, feels like it's more consumer than it is B2B, considering you're not exactly full stack compared to people that are already incumbent in this market. But that's pretty much most of my thoughts on this. I think it's, you know, think about what, you know, you're enabling businesses to do that the incumbents don't already do. And I think you're already finding you're going to already find yourself fighting some sort of an uphill battle if you're building a point solution versus this full stack kind of crypto payment solution. Whereas most consumers probably don't mind that. So I would probably think about leaning consumer, especially because I remember in the question you guys asked about improving UI and UX. The easiest way to do that is build for consumers. You'll probably have an easier time onboarding consumers, which means you'll probably end up processing more feedback, which should be significantly more helpful in you making early strides as far as like UI UX improvements.
Okay, thanks, Shri. Moving back to me, with GoRemote, and their question is, what's a good way to acquire our first cohort of clients? We have some ideas around targeting startups. They're just right around for expansion. Love to hear advice. So basically, so GoRemote, what they do is they help companies hire international talent, specifically from the Philippines, it looks like. And from what I remember, let's see positions. Okay. Not just from the Philippines, also from all these other places as well. So I think you're thinking about it the right way. Depending on the skill set, like if you have a bunch of engineers, software engineers, or like designers, or like technical people on your platform, and their skill set is probably in high demand of startups that have just raised a round of financing, they're looking to hire some engineers. I think, however, that a lot of the San Francisco Bay Area startups are biased towards hiring domestically, especially for early employees. So this is maybe just my slice of the world, so I may be biased in how I'm like viewing it, but a lot of the startups that I know that are like seed stage or Series A stage are hiring mainly from in-network. So like they're hiring their friends or the people that they worked with in the past, that kind of thing. I think people start to look for remote talent typically later on, if they do, where it's typically not from day one, but maybe like someone has just raised, let's say like a Series B, and you're starting to build out an engineering team that's beyond the first, say, like few dozen engineers. Then I think it makes more sense I think more people are inclined to look for international talent at that point. So I would just be trying to think about the people that are hiring a lot of international talent. Like the people that are more likely to hire international talent are probably the ones that are a little further along, that have just raised a round of financing. So maybe someone who just announced they're raising a Series B or something like that. Another thing I would look at are people that are companies that have expressed a desire to hire internationally already, because not every company is like that. A lot of companies, like for example, there are certain startups here in the Bay Area that pretty much only hire like domestically. And if someone has shown an inclination for wanting to hire internationally, let's say they are already remote or they have an office in another location, those companies might be more likely to convert or be more willing to work with you, as opposed to a company that is pretty much just hired entirely in like the San Francisco Bay Area or just in New York or something like that. So there are two dimensions for you to play off of. One is timing of the round and size of the company, and the other is inclination of going remote. Yeah, those are the first two things that I would start at least. I also remember that you're focusing more on skilled labor as opposed to like knowledge workers. So I do think startups, generally speaking, are probably a decent demographic to go after, but there's no reason why larger companies wouldn't be interested in this either. There is the whole macro trend, like there are a lot of companies that are doing layoffs right now, and hiring is probably a lot slower than it was in the past. So that might be difficult to navigate, but from a principled perspective, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to target these later stage companies either, in addition to like the startups, the later stage companies. So hopefully that provides some framework for you to think about how you want to go after potential customers. I do think going after like your Series B or C startup that already is remote or has an international office is probably a good place to start. All right. Next one is RevOps Careers, and their question is, what would be a good moat for a niche jobs marketplace? That is a good question. So you're focusing on helping people in revenue operations find jobs. So how do you build a moat here? So the tricky thing with any sort of job board like company is I think it's very hard to build a moat. And the reason for this is I call it the network affinity problem, where basically what it boils down to is both job seekers and companies are not incentivized to stay on a single platform when it comes to hiring. job seekers are going to be on all the platforms that they can be on in order to find more opportunities to cast a wide net. And similarly, companies are going to be on a wide range of platforms as well to find like as many candidates as they can, right? So there's no reason why they would just be on RevOps Careers. They'd probably be on, AngelList or LinkedIn or Hired or any of these other platforms as well. So I think it's a very hard problem to solve, and I think that's the reason why recruiting still hasn't really been innovated on a ton, because a lot of the startups that kind of enter the space top out at like 8-figure revenue at a certain point, just because both sides of the marketplace just want to be on all the platforms. So yeah, I haven't seen a company solve this problem yet. But if I were to think about it, I would, the only like reason why a company would use you instead of, and only you instead of all these other platforms, is if you really just did have like a much higher hit rate when it came to candidates. Like if they came to your platform and you had like a 50% hit rate on candidates, then there really wouldn't be a reason why they would go to on these other platforms to look for candidates. But that has proven to be a very, very difficult problem to date. And I don't think anyone's really solved it, but that's kind of how I would put it to the test, is if you can actually solve that problem. And I think it's really hard. I think being specifically in revenue operations is a good thing, because quality of candidate and intent is going to be a lot higher than like your average applicant for this job on like AngelList or LinkedIn. So you probably will have a little bit more signal, but whether or not that results in a better hit rate at the end of the day is still up to the quality of the candidate on the platform. So I guess being really discerning on the kind of applications you let through might help you with this, but obviously you want to balance that and like your applicant pool. Yeah, I still think it's a really hard problem, as you can tell. But that's kind of how I would go about it, is trying to solve that hit rate problem. All right, moving on to the next one, back to Daniel. We have landing page feedback for AppsFor.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think the nice thing about this landing page is that it's short and to the point, and I think it would be significantly better if it skipped the first section. Is sort of like, I think you earn the right to have a section like that, the top section, when you're like Alphabet or Berkshire Hathaway, but that's far away. It's good to start with what you're actually selling to people, because attention spans are short on the internet today. Anyway, so I would just have that top section, what else would we do if we assume we just have the top section? Let's it's a personal finance manager. Yeah. I think it's good to have screenshots of the product in action. There's probably too many screenshots being displayed at once here. So some carousel or something, or just honestly 3 or 4 sections and 2 screenshots per section is another way people solve that. Often it's not really clear. I mean, I think if someone were to walk away, if you were to show this to like a vision transformer and ask it what it sees, I think it would say, and also I think what a human would do is that some type of money finance management thing, but there's no clear value proposition. This is obviously not the only product in the market to tally expenses. So it would be good to highlight the ways in which you think you're different and good from everything else available there. And I would probably do that, in your second section. Obviously the domain needs to change too. Yeah, that should be the domain, Finateca. And click through the App Store thing. Do they actually have an app? Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, I would just do that and definitely have that App Store link thing. Yeah. Sounds great.
Yep.
What's there at the bottom? Yeah, I don't know why you need to attach a file if you have questions. That's sort of weird, and that's all fine. So I'd probably attach a file. Honestly, there's so many good mobile app let's see, mobile app websites that don't have a web presence that you could go look at. I would just go look at any of the popular iPhone apps that don't have a web presence and sort of crib off what they've done.
All right. And last but not least, we have PalRealtors in Nigeria, and their question for you, Daniel, is when to expand to other countries.
All right, so this thing lets you lease a house. It's okay, so Zillow. It's a Zillow. Register as a partner, list your properties, receive payments. Sort of Zillow does a Zillow rent thing, maybe similar. When to expand to other countries? It's hard, answering a general question is a little bit hard without knowing specifics, but it is certainly good. It is certainly good to feel like you've really saturated your country that you're in before expanding to another. Like I think if you use Uber as a template, they truly dominated San Francisco before expanding to, I think New York, and then across the United States, and then globally. But like they definitely had product market fit first. So you want to feel like you have real product market fit, honestly. And yeah, if you're at the point where you feel like you really do, and you have you're like, okay, 10% of the people that live in this city use our product, then maybe you could start thinking about that. So I don't know, maybe this company's there. I don't know the Nigerian market, but yeah, should really feel like you have something going, you have a system humming. The reason why this matters, I think, is not just oh, it's good to focus, is because when you start scaling, the way you'll usually do it is you'll hire a GM in a new country, and then you're going to want to give them a playbook of just a template of what works that they can modify to their local customs. Uber in India, I think it lets you do cash payments. So there's always little modifications that you have to do, but you want to have the template that you can give them so that they can go run with it. And it takes a while to figure out what that template is. And product market fits are usually a pretty good sign. You have a sense of a thing. So anyway, that would be my super high level answer.
All right. Thanks very much, Daniel. I think that brings us to the end. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. Hopefully some of the feedback was helpful. Thanks again.
Thank you,
All right.
Andrew, Shri, Daniel. Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you, Rishi, Shri, Andrew.
Take care, everybody.